coming today. Before I start on this topic of self-sabotage and limiting beliefs, I would like to, I'll be using this as a whiteboard to write and draw. Maybe you can turn off some of the lights.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely better. This is on? Kaushalangu, this is on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask, what does the word self-sabotage mean to you? Or what is, if you hear somebody sabotaging themselves, what does it mean to you? Any thoughts about this? I would like to have a common foundation or denominator from which we can start off the discussion. So, okay, I'll start with, I'll be basically taking this class as a sip of wisdom. We're talking about three things. First is the story. I'll share my story about self-sabotage. Then I'll talk about some insights based on the Bhagavad Gita and the yoga tradition. And finally, I'll talk about some practicals about what we can do, each one of us, to deal with self-sabotage. Okay. So, when I was growing up, as many of you see that, I need crutches for walking. So when I was one, I got polio. Basically, I was staying in India in a small town, and there was my mother took me to a clinic to get the polio vaccine. But unfortunately, at that place, somehow it happened that there was a regular power supply outage, and the previous night there was power supply outage in the clinic. So because of that, the fridge in which the vaccines had been kept had got heated up, and neither the attendant nor the physician noticed it. Because of that extra temperature, the germs in the vaccine multiplied, and when I was given the vaccine, instead of preventing polio, it ended up causing polio. So now when I travel across the world, I meet many people. I often give talks to people with special needs, and some of the stories are remarkably inspiring. Or resilience of the human spirit is astonishing. But far more are stories of people who are filled with resentment. They're fighting battles that were already lost many years or decades ago. And somehow, the more we keep fighting battles that are lost, it is we who end up lost by that. So that was something which struck me, that when I talk with people, I try to help them. But I look at my life, I don't really remember any time being resentful about my physical disability. It's not that I'm free from resentment. There are other things I resent. It's just a human emotion and we have to deal with it. But to a large extent, the credit for this goes to my mother. When I was about when I got polio, and then I was 2.5 or 3, a distant relative had come to our home, and she was consoling my mother, saying, "It's so sad, the son got polio." And I remember my mother's voice, calm, clear, confident. She said, "Whatever he lacks physically, God will provide him intellectually." And somehow that stayed with me. So I couldn't play any outdoor game like other kids could play. I was quite physically restricted, immobilized. But intellectually, I found that when I read things, I could remember things well, I could articulate things nicely. I could also put things in proper context. So basically, I found a way to grow in my life intellectually. So initially, that intellectual part was what guided me. So I have seen that resentment is one thing that can sabotage a lot of people. Why did this happen to me? Why is it like this? Why is it like that? So that's one part, I said, about my story. Would any of you like to share? You don't have to tell necessarily your story, but just what does self-sabotage look like to you in your observation? of your life, the people around you?
Doing something we never shouldn't do, or vice versa.
Okay, doing something we shouldn't do. Okay, so can you give an example of what means?
Yeah, for example, let's say I say to myself that I'm only gonna eat sweets at the weekend, but then during the week I indulge in eating a lot of sweets.
Okay.
So that is sabotaging the goal.
So do that which is, you could say, unhealthy. Unhealthy can be physically unhealthy, emotionally unhealthy, spiritually unhealthy. And the other is we don't do what is healthy, what is desirable, what is beneficial. True. Thank you. Yes?
Getting lost in like false narratives or assumptions.
Okay. Can you give an example of what you mean by false narratives or assumptions?
Like the tricks the mind plays and like trying to explain and coming up with assumptions and stories to understand, but it's not always true. It's just an assumption.
Okay. So the assumptions about people, assumptions about the nature of the world, assumptions about ourselves. Yeah, that's true. False narratives. That is very true. This is how people can become biased. This is how people can become very cynical about others. There's an American comedian who said that I love humanity. It's just human beings I can't get along with. So we can come up with false narratives and assumptions. Anything else? Our self-sabotage?
Yeah, a negative voice in my head.
Yes. The inner critic, you can say.
The inner critic, that's a better word.
Yeah. Whatever you try to do, you won't be able to do it. You are no good. You are a loser. So the inner critic comes in. Yes, true.
It could be also connected with a feeling of not deserving what you are experiencing, even if what you are experiencing is good, you feel that you don't deserve, and then things start going bad.
Yes, it's called something the imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome there.
Yeah, so what I'm doing, what I'm getting, actually I'm not worth it. I'm just putting on an act, and sooner or later it will be exposed. And then, yeah, that's true. So, anything else?
Shame of the past, things, not accepting things you can't change in the past, like we all make mistakes and
Okay.
they kind of haunt you.
So shame about past actions, past mistakes. That is true. So it's good to be aware of our mistakes and learn from them. But shame is like we keep beating ourselves up for what we did. And that's not healthy at all. So resentment is often more about past things that happened to us. But shame is more about past mistakes that we ourselves made. True. Anything else?
Traumatic experiences growing up.
How might traumatic experience different? How might this lead to self-sabotage?
I suppose it goes back to the critical voice.
Okay.
Well, the traumatic experience is what I know about myself is some of that's running my life, or used to, without me being aware that it's running my life.
Yeah.
So generally it's related to a whole lot of fear.
Yes. So trauma, it can affect in many ways. One of the things is trauma leads to a lot of fear. And that's why we may never venture out of our, what we consider the safe space or the comfort zone. And then there is much of life that is waiting for us, beckoning us, but we don't go towards that, all that. So trauma can keep us.
Also related to trauma could be guilt, like childhood trauma. This was my fault, why my parents split up. So you go through life with this guilt, and you use drugs or alcohol to push that guilt away and drown it out. So yeah, guilt is a big part.
Yes, so guilt can, see, many of these ultimately lead to, when these negative emotions are there inside us, then we can't live with negative emotions for very long. Then we have to get away from those. And one way we get away from them is by seeking quick dopamine hits. That's where some can get addicted. So drugs, nobody's born with a bottle of alcohol in their mouth. But then that becomes a coping mechanism or an escape mechanism, and that can become unhealthy with time. That's how problems come up. That's self-sabotage. This is quite a sobering list, but then life itself is sobering. So, yeah. So it is difficult. So yes, let's talk about this particular part now. I talked about, all of you shared some stories. Now let's move to the insights part. One of the key things which, when I started studying the Bhagavad Gita, which helped me a lot, is that everything inside me is not me. Everything inside me is not me. See, we have this very natural understanding. Let's say, like, you are here, you are outside me, and there's something inside me. So, for example, if a friend came and said to us, "You are a loser, you will never amount to anything, you are just a fool." If somebody came and told us you are an imposter, now that might affect us, but we won't take it sitting down. Sometimes if somebody devalues us, somebody minimizes us, somebody criticizes, denigrates us, that can become a motivation for, I'll show you I'm not like that. I'm different. So generally what happens, if I am here and somebody outside is negative, then generally we counter it. Now how we counter, or at least we try to counter it. This is not to minimize the effect of negative voices around us, people around us. They can be very demoralizing. We need people who encourage and uplift us also. But the point I'm making is that if somebody outside speaks negatively, at least we'll try to put up a fight. But when that negative voice comes from inside, it is often that we put up much lesser of a fight, because we may equate it with ourselves. So what the Gita does is, it actually gives a model of the self that helps us to differentiate. So everything inside me is not me. That means, say, now if I consider this is the self, there is clearly somebody who is outside the self. But the self is itself multi-layered. So there is our physical side, this is our body, then there is our mind. And beyond that is the soul. So our existence is 3-level. And in this 3-level existence, we could compare this to a computer system. Now, in a computer system, there is the hardware, which is like the body, and the software, which is like the mind, and we ourselves are the user. So many of the negative voices that are there, they are present in the mind. So these are the negative voices, the emotional wounds, the addictive cravings, all these are present inside us. So everything inside me is not me. This model, it also means that sometimes when we try to discipline ourselves, it's like, say, if you talk about sweets, it could be somebody taking alcohol, somebody is taking something else. When we try to discipline ourselves, we start thinking that it is a fight against me. We start feeling maybe I am being deprived. I want to eat this, I want to enjoy this, why should I not do it? So it's like, so this is where when we try to discipline ourselves, or when we try to strengthen ourselves, let's use the word discipline right now, we'll expand the ambit of it. So we can have 2 distinct visions of discipline. Discipline can be, it's a fight with us. or rather, it's a more direct word, fight with me. It's a fight with me, or it's a fight within me. So the small word in is a small difference that can make a huge difference. If I think it's a fight with me, if I think that, say, if somebody's an alcoholic and they identify themselves as an alcoholic, then not taking alcohol is I am depriving myself. If I identify myself as a loser, as a victim, as a gullible person, then when I try to act differently, I try to act in a healthy way, but it feels as if I am going against myself. So now, if we have this vision that discipline is a fight with me, then it can become, with time, it becomes exhausting. If I am fighting with myself, then it's just, how long can I fight with myself? But if it's a fight within me, it is a fight within me between, you could say, there is the false self and there is the true self. The false self is the many negative voices that are there. Then this can actually become a vision that is empowering. I am not fighting against me, I am fighting for me. Fighting for the real me. So the question of self-identity is very important. So what the Gita does is, if I go back over here, this is what we don't want, this is what we want. So if somebody sees themselves as whatever it is, generally the self-sabotage can happen at the level of beliefs, it can happen at the level of emotions, and it can happen at the level of desires. So it's like sometimes there's a saying, you have made your bed and now you have to sleep on your bed. So our inner world is like the bed that we live in. These three things, our beliefs, our emotions, and our desires. These three are the inner bed that we lie on. Now, on a bed, if even one part of the bed is pointed, if there's a slight lump on the bed, we can't sleep very comfortably. But if there is a needle in the bed, then the place where we are supposed to be comfortable, that is a place, leave alone comfortable, not only uncomfortable, it is painful. It's a sting which is difficult to bear. It can be unbearable. So, if we are not comfortable in our own skin, then if our inner home is not a home for us, then where will be a home for us? So our beliefs, our emotions, and our desires, they are like the inner bed on which we lie. So all these are present over here in the mind. Now I'm simplifying this, that this is subtle body, the software. You can go into more nuanced analysis, we can talk about the ego, we can talk about the intelligence. But let's keep a minimal model over there, minimalist model. There are three levels of reality. The physical reality, the mental reality, and the spiritual reality. So who I am is the soul. But often the soul's voice gets quite muted. And the loud voice inside us is the voice of the mind. And not even the mind. See, the mind is just like the software. So the mind itself is not the problem. The mind is a tool that connects us with the outer world. Just like if I'm going to use a phone, I need a software. Without the software, I won't be able to function. So the software is essential, but the software itself is not everything. So the software itself can have viruses with it. The software itself can have, sometimes you buy some devices, there's a lot of unnecessary apps that are there in the phone. And sometimes they don't even allow you to delete the apps. So there's a lot of bloatware, as they call it sometimes. So like that, we are carrying a lot of baggage. So there's a baggage and there is a drainage. Drainage means the power gets drained. Sometimes some apps are going on in the background, it just draining the power. So like that, inside the mind, there are many different impressions. So these impressions, so whatever is in the bed, this can be a baggage for us. Baggage means it's something which we are carrying, it can become a burden. And it can not only be a burden, it can slow us down, it can also lead to drainage. Our energy gets depleted. So, for example, if we have a negative belief that maybe I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough as a friend, I'm not good enough as a partner, I'm not good enough as a professional, I'm not good enough as a spiritualist, I'm not good enough. And we might be doing things fairly well. But then there's one incident where something goes wrong, or somehow we get somebody speaks something negative, and then that negative trigger activates the inner negativity inside us, and then that becomes overwhelming for us. So essentially, how this self-sabotage happens is that there are two things which combine. There is an external perception. You can say stimulus or perception. There are many stimuli in the outer world, but some stimuli become our perceptions. Like 10 people may criticize me, but maybe one person's criticism stays in my mind. I actually perceive it. It comes inside, it registers inside. That's the perception. So we could say there are many stimuli out here. But among these stimuli, some they come inside. This is what becomes the perception that comes inside. And then from internal, there are impressions. So when an external perception and an internal impression, they come together. So these impressions in Sanskrit are called as samskar. Have any of you heard this word samskar? So samskar can also be written in English as some scar. So everyone has some scar in their psyche, and then we get triggered by that. So the advantage of this particular model is that, if I go back over here, see, the body is just like the mind. So the mind is just like the body. So if somebody has a fractured hand, if you tell them you lift up heavy weight, they cannot. Now, that is a physical limitation. That does not make them a bad person. That is not a character deficiency. See, a physical limitation is not a character deficiency. It's just a limitation of the body. We have to be aware of that. Okay, if I can't lift luggage, okay, whenever I have to travel, I have to make sure that somebody I can arrange for lifting luggage. It's a physical limitation. Similarly, we may have a mental limitation. But everything inside me is not me. So even if I have mental limitations, so for example, somebody was traumatized by something, then maybe in particular areas, if they go, they feel very agitated. They get overwhelmed. That's a limitation. I cannot deal with this kind of thing right now. That's okay. That does not mean that we are a bad person. That does not mean we are a weak person. So this understanding, everything inside me is not me. What it leads to do is, we may have physical. Now, we have to be aware of the physical limitations. Similarly, we have to be aware of mental limitations. Right. So now, our beliefs about ourselves are also a part of the mental limitation. But this is not a character deficiency. It is not a character flaw, it's not a character deficiency. Some of us may just not be good at certain things. And that's okay if you're not good at those things. We can still function in our life. So this model, what it does is that it helps us to get healthy self-acceptance. I talked about being comfortable with our skin. So if we are to avoid self-sabotage, we need self-acceptance. Self-acceptance has two distinct aspects. First is accept our weaknesses. Now, if we don't accept our weaknesses, let me put another way over here. So, if I consider a pendulum, there is a healthy state of the pendulum. So, and there is an extreme or an unhealthy state of the unhealthy level of the pendulum. The pendulum can go to one extreme, it can go to the other extreme. So one part of the healthy is that I accept my weaknesses. Now, if I don't accept my weaknesses, then I stay in denial. And then denial will make me pray for relapse. So if somebody has an unhealthy coping mechanism, say that there is, they tend to drink too much or just binge watch TV or just buy a lot of things. Not all of these are equally damaging, but they're all undercutting our capacities. So now if we do not accept our weaknesses, we live in denial, we set ourselves up for being attacked and we're taken over. So it's like going back to this particular model. This is the self, and these are the impressions within the self, the negative impressions. So if I deny these, then they will attack me. If I am living in a high crime area and I deny it's a high crime area, I'll be mugged over there, isn't it? Just as we can be externally mugged, we can be internally mugged. So that's what will happen to us. You have pray for relapse means we'll be internally mugged. So we need to accept our weaknesses. What is this? Yeah, denial. I read that as dental. I was wondering whether dental. Okay. So now the other side is just as important. We accept ourselves with our weaknesses. Ourselves with our weaknesses. One extreme is there's nothing wrong with me. The other is everything is wrong with me. That one is there is no problem. I itself am myself the problem and there's no hope for me. So here we deny the existence of the mind with the negative impressions. That's we don't accept our weaknesses. The other is if we don't accept ourselves with our weaknesses, then we go to the other extreme of self-loathing. Some people go beyond self-loathing to self-hatred. And this is just as toxic. And sometimes the same people go between those two extremes. One side is that I am great, I am wonderful, I am perfect. Now self-acceptance is that I am valuable, I am precious, not that I am perfect. If I start thinking I am perfect, all that means is I am in perfect illusion. Isn't it? Because who among us can claim to be perfect? If I think I am perfect, then there is no scope for me to improve at all. All of us, even if we assume we have no self-sabotaging characteristics, but still we have untapped potentials. We can tap them and we can do so much more in life. So one side is extreme, it's like I am perfect, I am flawless. The other is I am hopeless. I am so flawed that no one can help me. Right? So here it's almost like here our our self-identity becomes, it's almost as if you consider the soul, here there is the mind. So the mind has so much negativity inside that we almost like deny the existence of the soul itself. There is nothing, no spiritual core to me beyond my mind. So it's not that I am an alcoholic. Yes, I have a mind which is conditioned to alcohol. It's not that I am a short-tempered person. It's that I have a mind which has the conditioning to explore, to be aggressive. So I need to be able to distance myself from it. So these two extremes, that denial, so it's almost like, you could say at this level, here it is self-loathing, here there's a, I don't know if you have heard this word, it's self-congratulation. I am such a great person. The only problem in my life is people don't understand how great I am. Now it is possible that we have potentials and people have not recognized those. But we can't say that is the only problem. There are a lot of other problems with me also. So self-congratulation is also very unhealthy. Now in between these two is this, I accept my weaknesses and I accept myself with my weaknesses. This is where I'll go to the last part. So what was the acronym I was discussing? The acronym thing. Sorry?
Samskara.
Sip.
Or sip.
A sip of wisdom. So I talked about a story, talked about how I also experienced self-sabotage, and then I talked about the insight. So the insight is, everything inside me is not me. And now, after that, let's look at the practicals. So what do we do essentially? How do we go beyond self-sabotage? So let's look at this, that if you consider a 4-quadrant diagram, that we have the mind with its negative impressions, and we have the soul, which is ultimately spiritual and potentially a part of divinity. Its soul is not affected. The soul is never short-tempered. The soul is never alcoholic. The soul is never a binge eater. The soul is not an addict of anything. The soul is beyond trauma. The soul is beyond all that affects us at the level of the body and the mind. There is a core to me that is beyond all this. So once I understand this, then the two essential things that we need to do is that the negative voices that are there inside us, we need to weaken those voices. The wounds that are there inside us, we need to heal them. So the negativity within the mind has to be decreased. And the positive voice needs to be strengthened. The spiritual side of us needs to be made stronger. So essentially, if you could consider that there is the need to improve. And the faith that we can improve. So the need to improve comes from recognizing the mind. The mind's dangerousness. The mind's predatory tendencies. The more I recognize my mind's dangerousness, the more I realize that I have a need to become better. So need to improve is, I need to go away from this denial over here. And then the faith that I can improve, that comes from avoiding the self-loathing. I accept myself with my weaknesses. That comes from recognizing the soul's potential. So now we could say the need to improve, yes or no. I feel the need to improve or I don't feel the need to improve. I have faith that I can improve, yes or no. So now based on this, we can say there are 4 quadrants. 1, 2, 3 and 4, where I recognize the need to improve, but I don't have the faith that I can improve. I have neither the need nor do I have the faith. I don't feel the need or I have the faith. I have the faith but I don't feel the need. And I feel the need and I have the faith. So among these 4 quadrants, which is the best to be situated in? The 4th, the right top one. It's like going back to again a metaphor of physical injury. And suppose my hand is fractured. If I deny my hand is fractured, I will not take any treatment. So I have to recognize need to improve, need to heal. Let's use a more natural word over here. If you want to improve, sometimes improve requires, it's a need to heal. And the faith that we can heal. So first is that, okay, I have a fracture and I need to get over the fracture. Second is that there is a treatment available. There's faith that if I go to this doctor, I try this out, it will work. So need and faith. Now if we have, among the 4 quadrants, which would be the worst?
1, 2.
2, yes. If we feel neither the need nor the faith, then we are basically doomed. Doomed in the sense that we are in trouble now and future will be in worse trouble. So many people live like this, they're sabotaging themselves, they don't even recognize. They're sabotaging themselves, they just create a darker and darker future for themselves. Now, if we recognize the need to heal, need to improve, need to become better, but we don't have the faith that I can become better, then this is the place where we will become very frustrated. Frustrated to the point of demoralized is where a person can become depressed. See, the mind is so tricky. First we become depressed, and then we become depressed that we have become depressed. Or I decide I'm not going to become angry. I'm not going to yell at anyone. Somehow I get angry, and then I get angry that I got angry. So we trap ourselves that way. So we get frustrated. So frustrated is also bad. Now if we have faith that we can heal, but we don't feel the need to heal. I know there's a treatment, but I don't have much of a problem. I don't need to take the treatment. This is where we will be endangered. Endangered in the sense that this is where we won't necessarily be able to take things seriously. Now this is where, if we have feel the need and have the faith, we will be empowered. Yes. I think if I feel the need, I need to improve, and I have the faith that I can improve. So in general, in the wisdom texts like the Bhagavad Gita, and if you read further texts like the Bhagavatam, both are depicted. It is the dark side of human nature is depicted. How people fall to terrible temptations, how sometimes people act in devilish and demoniac ways. Those kind of narratives or that kind of analysis is meant to help us recognize that I have this need to improve. Or at least I should feel the need to improve. But along with that, in these texts, there's also the emphasis that each one of us has the potential to improve. That we are parts of a bigger reality. Each one of us is a part of divinity. And each one of us has the potential to bring out that divinity, to connect with that divinity and ever bring out the divinity within us. So the faith we can improve, faith we can heal, and the need to heal. So now, if we want to situate ourselves in this last 4th quadrant, how do we go about doing that? We conclude with this. So among the areas where we are facing problems. Let's shortlist. So if I have self-sabotage as a tendency. So maybe there are, say, 10 areas. 10 might be a very large number. But let's assume, let's put it 5. 5 where I recognize that these are areas. See, any of us, if you sit down for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we all can think of, like you mentioned in the list, the things which we should be doing but we are not doing, and things which we shouldn't be doing but we are doing. We can easily make a list in which we are undercutting ourselves. So if we make a list of, say, a 10 thing list, that things which are harmful for me. This is where I feel the need to improve. Need to improve, the need to heal. I feel that. And then look at the things that we feel are workable, improvable for us. The areas in which we feel we are reformable. We have some confidence that I can do it. So that is where I feel the faith to improve. So if we zero in on, even if we find one thing in the intersection of this Venn diagram, we can start work on that. So if I decide that I want to deal with my anger, or I want to deal with I spend too much time on social media. I spend too much time on just random net surfing. I spend too much time, I spend too much money on buying things. Whatever it is, we start with one area where we feel the need to improve, and we also have the faith that we can improve. Now, many times when we try to improve ourselves, this is a critical step that we don't take. We may feel the need to improve, but maybe we have tried so many times in the past that internally we have the faith I won't be able to do it. There's a British playwright, Oscar Wilde, he said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So, many times when we make resolutions and we don't succeed, one reason is that we may feel the need, but we don't feel the confidence that I will be able to do it. And sometimes we may have the confidence, I can do it, but I'll do it later. It's no big deal. Even if I don't do it, what difference does it make? It's not creating any major problems. So, is there even one area where we can feel the need as well as the faith, the confidence? And that is where we can actually apply ourselves. And the kirtan that we were doing when I came initially, we do regularly, this is a way we can link our consciousness to a higher divine reality. And this divine reality, this connection, actually, so what I talked about is more at a conscious level. This is the where I need to strengthen my soul, and I need to weaken the unhealthy impressions within my mind. So that is required. Now we can do it at a conscious level with respect to particular issues that we have to deal with. But at almost at a subconscious level, the connection with the divine, whether it is through prayer, whether it is through singing, whether it is through acts of service, what happens is when we do bhakti practice, when we connect with the divine, bhakti is a way to connect affectionately with the divine. So bhakti itself, it strengthens the soul. It strengthens, awakens the soul. Just the more we sing the holy names, the more we remember the divine, the more we pray to the divine, the more becomes our conviction that there is something divine within me. And that is the real me. That awareness that there is a core to me which is beyond all the negativities and the fallibilities, that becomes more and more, which strengthens or awakens the soul. And the other side is bhakti also weakens the mind, or more specifically, weakens the mind's negativities, weakens the mind's samskaras. So, this is something we can do at a conscious level. We are battling with our anarthas, and this is almost at a subconscious level. It is not that when we are remembering the divine through prayer. It's not necessary that we have to remember that, oh, I have this anger issue and I have to deal with this issue. I have this self, I'm doing this and this and that. That will happen automatically. But in this way, each one of us can actually go beyond the tendency to self-sabotage and manifest our full potentials, or at least manifest much greater of our potentials. We can, all of us have achieved certain things in our life, but how much more good we can do if that inner sabotaging force is removed from inside us. We already done some things, but how much more good can we do? Discovering that can be our life's greatest adventure. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our topic today was overcoming self-sabotage. So I talked about broadly 3 parts: SIP. S was the story. So many of you explained about how self-sabotage works. For us, it could be in many ways. It could be resentment, it could be trauma. So I won't list all of it. Resentment, it could be trauma, it could be addiction. So many things like that. So that is, then I talked about the insight. The key insight is that everything inside me is not me. Can you repeat that with me? Everything inside me is not me. Even if you forget everything else from this talk, just remember this one insight. Now, everything inside me is not me. How do we understand this? For that, I talked about the model of the self. In the model of the self, there is the body, the physical side we have. Then we have the mind, which is like the link between the two. And then there is the soul. The soul. So, now inside the mind are the various self-sabotaging beliefs for us. That is where they are stored. Now, from where they have come, that's not as important, they are there. And how do they manifest? They manifest through some perception from outside, triggered with some external perception, triggers some internal impression. And when both of these come together, this is the time when we are overwhelmed. So we experience overwhelm. So now here, what the insight this provides us is that discipline, when I'm trying to discipline myself, discipline is not a fight with me. It is a fight within me. It is a fight within me, and it is actually a fight for the real me. And this understanding can be very empowering for us. So I talked about how we can go towards 2 extremes. We want to avoid the 2 extremes in our own relationship with ourselves, or our vision of ourselves. Relationship with ourselves, with the self. One is, there is self-congratulation. There's nothing wrong with me. This will lead to, we're not acknowledging that mind is there with all the anarthas. And the other is self-hatred, self-loathing. So we want to avoid both of these. In between is acceptance. We accept 2 things. We accept our weaknesses, and we accept ourselves with our weaknesses. So when we learn to go both of these, this is where, with this healthy relationship, we accept ourselves with our weaknesses. Then it's easier for us to move forward. And the key point I discussed was that when we accept ourselves, accept our weaknesses, this is what creates the need to improve. And when we accept ourselves with our weaknesses, that means there is a soul within me that always has potential. This creates the faith that we can improve. And once we have the need and the faith both, then we discuss the practical part was that we need to situate ourselves in quadrant 4. The need to improve as well as the faith that we can improve. The faith to heal or improve, whichever word is more comfortable for us. So we discussed what are the characteristics of the 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is where we feel discouraged, we feel demoralized, we feel frustrated. Like I have a need to improve, but I don't think I can improve. This is where we are doomed. Here we are endangered. Because we have the facility to improve, but we don't take it seriously. This is where we are empowered. And once we are empowered, how do we situate ourselves in the 4th quadrant? I talked about 2 measures for that. Find out areas where we are doing self-sabotage. With respect to self-sabotage, where do I feel the need to improve and where I have the faith that I can improve. And start acting in one of these areas. And this is we can fight at a conscious level. And at a subconscious level, without focusing on either of these, if you practice bhakti, what bhakti will do is, bhakti will make our soul stronger and the mind's negativities weaker. And that's how each one of us can manifest our full potential and go beyond self-sabotage. Thank you very much. Hare
Well done.